Hello everyone, and welcome to our new series called Plugging In. Now, as you all know, plugging things in is a pretty important thing we got to do, right? Everything needs to be plugged in if you want it to work. You got to plug in your phone, you got to plug in your tablet, you got to plug in your computer. Everything needs to be plugged in. If you're like my wife Megan, you wait till it gets to like about maybe 1 or 2%, and then you plug something in. If you're like me, you wait till it gets to like 75, and you're like, this is too low. I need to plug it in. Everyone, I think, falls on one of those two sides of it. But things need to be plugged in. Now, I just grabbed a few things here. Look at this. So I got a plug for my computer. I got one for my iPhone. I got one for my watch. These are all Apple products, yet all different chargers. Don't get me started on that. But they all need to be plugged in. They're designed to be plugged in. Now, my phone, my watch, whatever it might be, they can last for a while, but eventually they need to be plugged in to a source of power. So those chargers are different, but they all plug into an outlet, and the outlet gives them power. Now, we as humans, we were designed in the same way. We were designed to be plugged in to a source of power. Of course, for us, that source of power is God. So what we're going to be talking about in this series is kind of just going through these different ideas of what are we plugging into and why are we doing it. But what I want to do tonight, most of you are, of course, watching this on a screen that's plugged in, but you're maybe with your small group, maybe you are by yourself, maybe you missed a week so you're catching up. Extra points if that's true. Whatever it is though, we're doing small groups. And with me, a big thing is always why. Why are we doing the things that we're doing? So even when it comes to small groups, why are we doing them? Why is that an important way to plug in? So we're going to look at just 3 points tonight. The first one, we are designed for connection. Our phone is designed to be plugged in. Our other devices are designed to be plugged in. You are designed to be plugged in, to be connected. Now, primarily, we're designed to be, of course, connected to God, but we're also designed to connect to each other. That's how we're made. It's how we're supposed to be. Now, the early church got this in the book of Acts. If you have a Bible, go to Acts 2:46. There it's talking about the early church, and it says, day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes. So they had this large group gathering. They'd get together, and they also would meet in their homes in basically small groups. Now, it was a little bit different back then. There weren't church buildings. It took a few hundred years for that to happen. And basically, they were kind of had this idea of community because they had to survive. But they still had these small groups that they plugged into. They understood the importance of community. Now, it's true that it's also important to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. If you're in junior high, if you're in high school, if you're older, if you're younger, whatever age you are, we need to have a personal relationship, a personal connection to Jesus. It's not enough that we're born in a country with a lot of Christians. It's not enough that we might be born in a family that's has Christian parents and Christian siblings, or just even Christian friends, or that we go to youth group or church. We have to have a personal relationship between us and Jesus. And there's also a community aspect, though, too. So it's personal, but the Bible actually says, did you know this, that we belong to each other? It's there. Let's look at Romans 12:5. It says, so though many, we are one body in Christ, and individually members one of another. So there's lots of us, and we're part of one body, but just like my hand belongs to this hand, it belongs all to each other. It's all part of one thing. So we have the individual relationship with Jesus, but we also are part of something bigger than just ourselves. If you're taking notes, if you're writing stuff down, write this down. Our faith is personal, but not private. I'll say that again. Our faith is personal, but not private. It's not meant to be a private thing. We were designed for community. So just like all our electronic devices were designed to be plugged in, you are designed to be plugged in. So our second point now, we need others, and you are needed by others. Not only do you need others, do you need community, you are also needed by others, which is such a cool thing. I think so often it's easy for all of us, we've all been there, to question our value, to question if we're important, to question if we're needed. You are. You are needed by others in the same way that you need others. That's what's talked about again in Scripture. We're supposed to be there for each other, to contribute to each other, to help each other. It says it this way in Romans 12:15. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. We're supposed to rejoice and celebrate with those who are celebrating and mourn and weep with those who are weeping. Now, when it comes to some of those things, I mean, if you think about it, like celebrating, I don't really need someone to celebrate with me. It's fun. I mean, I can jump up and down on my own. It's more fun when there's two people doing that, I guess. But I mean, I can still celebrate by myself. But sorrow, weeping, times of sadness and pain, that's really when we need each other. And those times, we never know when they're coming. During this global pandemic that we're going through, there's been all kinds of studies about how people are dealing with it. And across the board, they're finding everyone is struggling, having a tough time, has times of sadness, of sorrow, of feeling alone. I'm sure you felt that way. I know I have too. We need each other. No one saw this coming. We don't know what's going to happen next month or next year or 10 years from now. We need each other. We need to get in relationship with each other now so we can be ready when those things come. I have family that lives back in Ohio. And that's confusing because Ohio is technically considered the Midwest, even though it's in the Eastern time zone. It's confusing, but that's how it works. And in Ohio, I don't know if you knew this or not, but they have these things called tornadoes. We don't have those in California, but they have them back there. Now, my sister, I was talking to her, and she said one day they heard these sirens going off, and they knew those sirens meant tornadoes coming. Now, when you hear sirens for a tornado, that would be a horrible time to think, you know what? I'm going to go down, I'm going to start digging a basement so that we have a place to hide from the tornado. Because when the siren goes off, it's saying that this thing is like miles away, that it is coming. That's not time to get ready and prepared. Luckily, they had a basement, so right away, they went down there, they were in the basement, and again, luckily, the tornado actually did not come to where they were. But you want to get ready ahead of time. We're going to face seasons of joy and seasons of hardship, seasons when everything's great and seasons when things are really difficult. You need to have people there for you during those times. You have your parents, you have family, you have friends. We need each other. And we want to get to a place where we get to know each other, where we trust each other, where we can be vulnerable and reveal, say, this is what's going on in an honest way. And know that it's a safe place to do so, that people will listen to you and that they can share as well and that you can be there to support them. That's what this verse is talking about. It's better to be prepared. For those of you in high school, I know for myself, when I was in high school, I had a group of friends that I was with, and when times got difficult, when we went through difficulties and just hardship, they were there and they helped me through those times. Now, for those of you in junior high, that's actually when I met those friends and started building those relationships, started laying the foundation for that so that it was there later. Now, maybe you can think of someone like that. Maybe you have some people like that. Whatever it is, we can be building into those relationships more and more to get to a place where we are there for each other. Now, right now, look at your small group leader. And if you're not with your small group leader right now, then think about your small group leader. I don't know. For me, when I was in high school, when I was in junior high, I am still friends today with those who were my leaders then. So look at your small group leader and say, you're stuck with me. They are. It's a cool thing. It's such a neat thing to think that I'm still friends with those who were my leaders way back then. And there's still people that I'm in connection with, plugged in with, who I was a leader to years ago. It's this community that we build that can last for years later on, that we can be there for each other. Look now what it says at Romans 12:16. It says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. This is one of the reasons that we need each other. We need community. Because the Bible talks time and time again about not being wise in your own eyes. Basically not thinking that you know more than you do or thinking you're always right. Sometimes we're wrong. One time I was at a church and this lady came and she kind of just showed up one day and she said, I haven't been to church in years, but I'm so excited to be here. And even that kind of seemed strange because she was walking distance to the church. But we were just happy she was there and she showed up faithfully for several weeks. And one week we had this Bible study before church started, like a Sunday school class. And she was in there and we were talking about David. And we're talking about, David was this guy that messed up in a lot of big ways. I mean, adultery, murder. David messed up. But he still pursued God. He was still a man after God's own heart. And we thought, man, it's so encouraging to us that we're going to fall short. We're going to fail at times. We can keep pursuing God. And as we were talking about this, she just kind of was quiet. And finally, she spoke up and she said, David didn't sin. To which we're all thinking like, okay, adultery, murder. Yeah, I think he did. So we're trying to think like, What is she saying? Maybe we're not understanding. And she said, God's people don't sin. That kind of seems strange too. So we kept talking and kind of probing, like, well, what do you mean by that? And then I even shared, I said, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I stumble, I fall short sometimes, just like all of us do. And she said, wait a minute, if you people in this room, if you are sinners, if you sin, I can't be around you because I don't sin anymore. And she got up and she left, and we didn't see her again. She started thinking some things that were incorrect. And now here's the thing. So say if she was part of a group earlier on, and she said, guys, I'm kind of thinking that maybe followers of Jesus just stop sinning. What do you guys think? Someone in that group could have helped correct. Someone in that group could have said, actually it says in 1 John that if you say you don't sin, you're a liar. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. But she was isolated. So she had this thought that, maybe Christians never sin anymore. And in those pathways in her head, those kind of neural pathways, those mind things, they started forming. And the more she thought about them, the more she thought she was right. And the more it became ingrained. And the more she just said, this is what's true, and she couldn't hear from anyone else. We need each other to help correct. And at times we can help correct others as well. It's all part of our design. God designed us that way. Let's jump back to Acts real quick. Acts 2:42, it says there, the early church again, it says, they devoted themselves. So here's what they were devoted to, what they were all about. To the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayers. So those were the things they were devoted to, the things that they thought was really important. Of course, the apostles' teaching, but also fellowship. They were also devoted to fellowshipping with each other, to getting together with each other. There's going to be times when you need others. And there's going to be times when others need you. We need to be in community with each other. This applies to all of us. It's not just like something we talk about, like, yeah, I get the idea, that makes sense, and then, oh well. No, it applies to all of us. And there's our third and final point. You are not the exception. This is a rule that applies to you. It applies to me. It applies to your small group leader, to the one sitting on your left, on your right. It applies to all of us. We are all designed to be plugged in to a community. We're all designed to be plugged into a community that helps us plug more into God. That's the purpose. Hebrews 10:24 through 25 says, let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Again, for the early church, this was something they said, hey, don't neglect meeting together. Now, right now, we are, again, in the global pandemic, so we can't get inside our church building right now. That's not what this is talking about. Again, they didn't have church buildings for like a few hundred years after this. They gathered together. They got together as fellow believers. Right now, we can do that outside, so that's what we're doing. We can gather. We can be together. This is what we're supposed to do. And there's no clause there that says, well, unless you're just too busy, unless you just don't want to, unless you just don't feel like it. Small groups is one way that we're doing this. There's other ways to do this as well, but what it's being said here is we are meant to be in fellowship with other believers. Now, notice too that in Hebrews 10 here, it's not saying so much about what you get out of it. It's saying what you can contribute. It says you need to consider how to stir one another up to love and good works. You need to encourage one another. It's what you can give to the group. Sometimes it's easy for us to think about, like, what do I get out of it? And we do get things out of it. But the primary thing they're talking about here is how can you contribute? How can you help? You're supposed to encourage others. And to encourage others, you have to know others. And to know others, we need to gather together and get to know each other. That's what it takes. Now, even with a group like ours, like a group of 100, you're not going to be able to connect to every single person when we get together. It's just not possible. I can think of it this way. Think about like Legos. Legos are fun. They're always good for illustrations. So in this case, like a Lego, imagine you are this Lego. Notice a Lego only has so many spots to connect. This one has four connection spots. Now maybe you're like a little more introverted, a little more shy, nothing wrong with that, and you just have a few spots, a few possibilities of connection. That's fine. Maybe you have a few more. Maybe you're like my wife, Megan, and you have a lot. You can connect with a lot of people. Even still, what happens is, over time, you start to connect, and you start to connect, and you start to connect, and before you know it, it slowly but surely gets filled up. No matter what, no matter how extroverted, how outgoing, or how introverted and shy, we all only have so much room for connections. What we need to do is fill some of those spots with genuine relationships. Fill some of those spots with a genuine connection. Fill some of those spots with people that really know us and that we can really get to know. One of the values of a small group is there's time and space to really get to know each other. To talk about, like, one of the things I say is highs and lows. What was the highlight of your week? What was the low part of your week? To talk about those kind of things, to get to know each other. That if someone says, hey, 2 weeks ago you mentioned this, how did that go? Or, hey, I heard you remember had this thing coming up. How are you getting ready for it? Is it still working out? That we can really get to know each other. We all need that. You're not the exception to the rule. I'm not the exception to the rule. I really believe God created us, designed us to be plugged into each other so that we can then help each other to plug in more to Him. My prayer, I think, for this term really is with the small groups. What I'm hoping to see is you guys get to know each other. You guys are able to spend time with each other, to connect. For each of you to know the others in that circle and to also be known by the others in that circle. And to have great discussions around God's Word. That's what I'm really hoping for and hoping that we see. That we have a place that we can get to know, that we can connect to God, that we can connect to each other. And as a group, pursue Jesus together. And like it says there in Hebrews, to consider how to stir up each other towards love and good works. So in a nutshell, that's why we're doing small groups. Now, right now, you guys are going to discuss in your small groups. If you're at home watching this alone, text someone, call someone, grab someone in your house and talk about this. But really think about this more. Not just what are we doing, but why are we doing it? Why are we doing small groups? Why do we gather together? What's it all about? All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.